Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefuehl, today with me AJ. On today's episode, I've come all the way to Munich to test drive the all-new 5th generation Volkswagen Caddy. Let's take a closer look. The new Caddy is on the new Volkswagen MQB platform, which is the same platform that the Golf 8 has. Therefore, the dimensions of the new Caddy has also changed. It's 1.85 meters wide, which is 62 millimeters wider than the previous generation. It's 4.5 meters long, which is also 93 millimeters longer than the previous generation. And also, compared to the previous generations, I think the new Gen 5 Caddy also looks a lot more refreshing than the previous facelift did. And what I mean by that is you have that very Volkswagen family-esque front headlamp unit with these really nice chrome detailing which connects the two headlamps together through this front strip as well. Further down, I mean, this is something also which grabs your attention right away, this gorgeous honeycomb structure which goes all the way across the width of the lower bumper. Now, to be honest, while it's always a nice family MPV and a van to have, it's also a very commonly used commercial vehicle. And something with this much intricacy is definitely going to have more manufacturing cost. And for a commercial vehicle, this should be something a little bit more as a sacrificial element. And I don't know if this is a good idea to have something so complex that would be more expensive to replace. But nevertheless, what you do see here is the new radar sensor for the adaptive cruise control. And that brings me to the next point. The Gen 5 Caddy comes with a lot of assistance systems. We'll take a look at them later on, but hopefully with things like this, which enables the emergency assist, the travel assist, and so on, you shouldn't be damaging the front bumpers anyway. The Caddy comes in a panel van, a camper van, as well as the MPV variant. You can either have it with a longer wheelbase version or the short wheelbase. What you see here is the short wheelbase MPV version in a Costa Azul blue metallic color in the Move Launch Edition trim line. Amongst the other things that are new for this generation are the wheels. You can for the first time get 18-inch wheels optionally for your Caddy. However, the one you see here is 17 inches, but I like the look of it and I think it complements this overall design and this very nice youthful color of the Caddy and fills the wheel arches pretty well. Another thing that they've really worked on for this new generation is the aerodynamics. So they claim that with the new engine, and we'll talk about the engines later on, and this new aerodynamic design, the Caddy is now up to 12% more efficient, and we'll test that out once we get driving on the road. What I also like about this new trim line is the fact that you have things like contrasting outside rear view mirrors here in glossy black, a nice gray metal finish roof rack as well. You might also be happy to hear that, of course, the front suspension is McPherson strut, but while the rear axle retains its solid axle configuration, you now have coil springs, so the handling is supposed to be a little bit better, as well as retaining that load-bearing capacity. And we'll again test that out once we're driving. So overall, the profile remains very nice, very simple, very boxy, very Caddy, and what I must point out that while in the MPV version you have these large windows which are great, unlike the previous generation, they have gone back to the indentations for the panel van for the windows, which I'm not so sure about because in reality it would be much nicer to have a flat surface. I would also assume aerodynamics, right? It should be more flat and smooth. Plus, for a commercial vehicle, signage is also very important. And if you have indentations where the windows would have been in the panel van, then it's not that nice to have signage on the side. But nevertheless, again, small details like this nice brushed aluminum effect, or this rail for the doors, the roof rack, and just generally, I think it's a very handsome looking MPV now. Here at the back of the Caddy, I really like this new design. I think it's very similar to the rest of its family in the modern generation. So I see a little bit of the Volkswagen Up in this design. I see a little bit of the T-Cross in the tail lamp design, and it really pops. You have, of course, this LED, but you also have chrome with the nice signature on the inside. Just these little details, which, it makes you feel happy when you look at it, I would say. Also the contours, like there's a lot of little contours and angles here. It also tucks in below this, so It looks really nice. And this, of course, has a huge opening. So it's bigger than my apartment door. It's like a garage door, really. But of course, this is to enable you to easily load in items. And now, because of the newer dimensions, you can load 2 Euro pallets inside the Caddy. So this long and completely openable rear hatch enables easy access to that. VW logo, parking camera, really nice parking camera, by the way. Caddy stamped down here. Parking sensors for, of course, the new technology, including the park assist, the trailer assist, and so on, and a very simple bumper along the bottom. So overall, I like the design, but what about you guys? Let me know in the comments below. All right, let's take a look. First of all, check this out. Soft close in a Caddy, that's nice. Again, huge door, but of course, thankfully, very powerful pneumatic struts as well. If we get rid of the parcel shelf, voila. This is an MPV, and space is what it's all about, so let's talk numbers. 3.1 cubic meters in the short wheelbase when you have everything out, and 3.7 cubic meters in the long wheelbase version. You can also get this as a 7-seater, but as you can see, obviously, we only have the 5-seater version, but there would be an additional set of 2 seats which pop up like this, which in the short wheelbase version will not really give you much trunk volume. So if you're interested in having a short wheelbase 7-seater, make sure you go to the showroom and check out, how the trunk looks, and make sure you're satisfied with the limited space. But nevertheless, some cubby holes over here, a very flat rectangular loading area. There's no, the wheel arches don't impede, so it's a very usable space. In this MPV version, you have nice felt lining, carpet all along, but you'll have a more rugged paneling and floorboards in the panel van. You have a lot of tether points that you can, secure these items away. You have a mesh as well if you have tall items stacked up, that when you brake, those items don't go flying into the cabin and hit the back of the head of the person sitting inside. And of course, you can also tumble the seats down, and you can remove the seats altogether, and they're a bit heavy and they don't slide forward and backward, but it's nice to have the ability to really take all the seats out and make this a nice space to carry your mountain bikes or other camping equipment, for example. All right, does it have pneumatic struts? No, so you got to do it the old-fashioned way. But anyway, let's talk about engines, shall we? At launch, you only have the one 2-liter TDI option available. So that's the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine. You can have this in different states of tune. There's a 75 PS, there's 102 PS, and there's 122 PS, or metric horsepower. This is a 122 PS version of that engine. This comes with either a 6-speed manual or the new shift-by-wire dual-clutch 7-speed DSG. As you can see, they're transversely mounted, and they're front-wheel drive only. However, the good news is going forward, you will have more options. There will be the 1.5 TSI, which is a turbo 4 petrol engine. There will also be a plug-in hybrid. There will also be a TGI, which is the bivalent natural gas engine. But there will not be a fully electric version. So the plug-in hybrid is as close to electrification as you will get. The fully electric platform, honestly, is the new platform that we see. It's not the MQB anymore. So the ID3, for example, so that new ID line of cars and that platform are going to be the electric cars only. So the ID Buzz, you guys remember that? So maybe a commercial version of the ID Buzz would be the equivalent of something like an electric Caddy. So this is all you get. But yeah, going forward, you will also be able to get the all-wheel drive version as well. Important talking points about this engine. This is, I believe, the EA288 family of diesel engines, the 2-liter TDI, but now they come with twin dosing, AdBlue, and dual catalytic converters to make this so clean. So, for example, you can see here, this is one of the cats right here. There's a little bit of injection of AdBlue right away, and then it goes to the second CatCon, and there's an additional injection of AdBlue. All right, let's take a look at the key fobs. Very familiar with the Golf 8 and the Cupra Formentor I just saw a couple weeks ago. And again, these are real buttons below the silicone casing, but this is a little bit more familiar. This is pretty much the same as the last generation's auxiliary heater controller. Nevertheless, keyless entry, so I put it in my pocket, approach the car, touch the door handle, and it unlocks for me. The door is really nice and tall, with this tall body, gives you really good ingress. If we look at the door itself, the materials are, well, fairly hard, I would say. While the entire panel itself has a little bit of squeeginess to it, the surface is quite hard, but you do get some different patterns. So there's a little bit of a texture here, a different pattern down here, albeit in the same color. Further down though, however, you do have soft touch material, so this is nice. There's a textile material and some sponge or some cushioning here for your elbow. Familiar switchgear and a large door pocket. Now, if you were to look inside, this is where the biggest change is apparent. First of all, I really like the little touches like the top of the dash where you have a place to drop in your clipboard as a commercial vehicle, or just to drop some keys, your gloves. Very useful, and even for a personal usage, a consumer version of this MPV, it's also useful to keep some, your phone and stuff like that. But ultimately, the new generation brings with it new technology, and we see that right away with the virtual cockpit, the digital cockpit, as well as the new 10-inch touchscreen. The steering wheel as well is the new steering wheel that we've seen before, which I really like. And the seats as well are a lot more familiar, but I do like this textile pattern. It's always nicer to have, and I do appreciate that little bit of blue piping in the stitching, which kind of complements the color that we saw on the outside. Getting inside, well, because of this tall ingress, it's very easy. I don't have to stoop down too low, and a very low floor also means that I don't have to climb over the sill. The seating position is fairly upright. I have kept the seat pretty low, but as you can see, the railing is over here and the footwell drops a little bit below. But again, it's an MPV, it's not a Golf, and I have a very commanding view. There's a large panoramic roof on the inside, which we'll see in a minute. And yeah, a lot to talk about this new technology, so hop inside and we'll take a closer look. All right, let's first take a look at the steering wheel. We have the new steering wheel here with the new logo, the new texture. It feels nice, it looks premium, and feels really good to touch. But what's not so new are the stalks. They're fairly familiar, but nevertheless, I like that there's a little bit of familiarity as well. The steering wheel itself has a lot of controls. All of this is to control your digital cockpit, and this is here to control the assistance systems. So speaking of the digital cockpit, again, we're familiar with the system. There is a plethora of options, but generally the best way to handle this is to spend a couple hours when you get the car, or a couple days rather, and decide what you like where and set it up, and then not really have to keep worrying about it. So in that way, you can change what you see on the individual sections of the digital cockpit. So on the left section, you can say, I want to see the fuel gauge or the AdBlue range or the operating temperatures or the consumptions and so on. So you can have the different, you can have this on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, for example, you can say, I want the speed, the time, my audio or telephony, and so on and so forth. So once you have that set up, then you can toggle between the overall view by pushing on the button on the steering wheel here. So now I continue to have what I've selected, but the whole screen itself is now the navigation map. And then I can go into this view, which has the assistance systems, for example. And therefore, once I set up what I want to see on each side, I can just toggle really quickly between these three views. So ultimately, it's nice to have the ability to change the things that you want to change, and therefore be able to have a little bit more control. I also like the fact that the light control buttons are on the top here. Usually in the Golf and, for example, the Cupras and the Seats and Skodas are further down, which is a little bit hard to see. And since there are no buttons, again, these are all capacitive, it's hard to see what you're pressing. Whereas now it's right on the top, along the line of the digital cockpit. In fact, a little bit higher, so it's always easy to press the light switches. Another big talking point of this generation of the Caddy is, of course, this new touchscreen infotainment system, and hence the lack thereof of other buttons down here, including, as you will notice right away, no volume control, and no climate control. That's all controlled by these touch sliders, which we've seen, we've discussed, we've argued, we've debated. And while I am okay with the amount of settings, I'm still not okay with the fact that we have to control these things with touch sliders, because no matter how many of these I've tried, they're always a little bit, you have to look at them, you have to see if it's making a real effect on the change. There's no tactile feedback, and I really think these should just be knobs. What do you think? This is my opinion. This is also something, objectively I think is better, but the main reason why these car manufacturers are going in this direction is, of course, for cost saving. So that being said, I like how Volkswagen has given me shortcuts down here for the things that I would use right away, and I want to be able to click and access the menu without having to go through nested menus in the main screen. That is, for example, the climate control. So I click on the Klima and I get directly into my climate control, where I can change the temperature, the seat heater, the fan speed, the vent control, and so on and so forth, and turn it off altogether if I want to. I can click on this button here to go directly to the park menu with the park assist, the park distance control, which is the parking sensors, as well as go directly to my assistance systems. So, and I also like that this is a very smartphone-like interface with the big home button, very reminiscent of the smartphones that I'm used to over here. It also understands when you come close to it. Also, you have a drawer on the top with some notifications and quick settings, and the main screen gives you access to a bunch of menus, as well as your home page, which you land on, can have a collection of important things you like to see, like a mini map over here, your audio control, vehicle status, and phone status. So this is probably the best screen to be driving around in most of the time, and you can always slide back and forth to see the detailed settings very easily. So on this main screen, you have a lot of different options. You also get the We Connect, which you can connect this your car with your app to control the climatization, for example, get updates on the condition or the service or any warning messages. And you can also set up multiple user accounts. So for different people who are driving this, it's connected, and it's a smart interface as well in terms of giving you live updates on weather, traffic, parking spots, and so on and so forth. You have a lot of assistance systems as well. Let's take a quick look at some of them. Lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, side assist, dynamic road sign display, driver assist, driver alert system, eco assist, and autonomous emergency braking. Now, what's good to know is the combination of these, so the lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, and the dynamic road display combine themselves together for travel assist. And we'll test this out once we're driving, but essentially it's a semi-autonomous system where I just activate this, and with that it will maintain the distance with the car in front, keep me in the middle of the lane, and when it sees that the speed limit is changing, also change the speed of the cruise control as well. So another first for the Caddy. So overall, I like the system. I'm not so sure about this. This is somehow, it's a saving grace. But I also like the details, like for example, to slide it all the way right means that I block the vent. I don't have another slider for that. And then I can slide it to the left, and in between here, adjust the direction of the airflow and close it all together. In addition, there's some cool new features like a shop where you can download additional apps, like an app store. So you don't have to buy all the features that you don't need. You can just specifically pick the things you want. And there's also, of course, connectivity with your smartphone with MirrorLink, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. Being in the Caddy, there's a lot of storage spaces. For example, like I said, I really like this area over here. Very nice contoured cubbies for you to drop items in, as well as a 12-volt power socket up here, so you can charge some additional ancillary accessories that you might have. Even down here, you have a little bit of another storage area, which you can probably keep some more documents. The glove box is damped and it's fairly large, although there is no felt lining. It's a bit hard, but you also have a place to keep some cards and coins, so it is a bit more practical. Moving to the center console as well, we have another 12-volt power socket, a couple USB-C ports, and an inductive phone charger, which you can close the flap after you've put your phone down, and then you can keep more items there. The engine start-stop button, and in this case we have the 6-speed manual. And finally, down here as well, some more places, for example, to keep the keys, as well as 2 cup holders. However, there is no spring-loaded clamp, so this is not going to really grip your drink. All right, let's take a look in the back seat. Sliding door gives you a very wide access. And remember, with the longer wheelbase version, this opening will be even larger. So again, not only for the passenger version, but also for commercial vehicles, very easy to load items from the side. Getting inside is easy, but I don't have a handle. Nevertheless, tall door means getting inside is not a problem. A little bit of a reach behind me to close the door. I have a very hard panel for the door, but I still have place to keep my elbow. What's really nice, however, is the large panoramic glass roof. It doesn't open, mind you, it's just fixed, but still lets in plenty of light. Therefore, also plenty of headroom. I mean, I could wear a really tall cowboy hat, no problem at all. This seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'8", or about 1.7273 meters. And as you see, I have plenty of knee room. I can slide my feet under the front seat as well. The seats themselves are fairly comfortable. There's a lot of space on the side as well. And I can also change the angle of recline. I mean, I wouldn't want to sit like this, but there's multiple steps. Maybe this would be more comfortable for longer journeys. The bench itself is a little bit shallow, I would say. It doesn't provide too much under-thigh support, but on the whole, it's fairly comfortable. Isofix, 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 so no isofix in the middle. Also, no ski hatch, it is fixed, no armrest either in these seats, and the seats also don't slide forward and backward. So this is a little bit old-fashioned. This new generation does not bring with it anything new in terms of this seating mobility. However, I still have those cool smart vents to close, open, and change the direction of flow. A couple USB-C ports. No third climate zone here in this car, but a power outlet as well. And some simple, clever features, like for example in the back of the seat, instead of just large pouches, I have 2 small pouches where I can put a phone, maybe some a wallet or keys or something like that, and a lunch tray as well with a hole to drop in a cup. Let's start off the driving segment of this episode here in the city. So I'm in a little village just about an hour outside of Munich. So how does the 5th generation all-new Caddy fare in the city? First of all, let's start with the control interfaces. So I'm driving, as you guys know, the 2-liter diesel with 122 horsepower. So the diesel engine is mated in this case to a 6-speed manual transmission, and of course only front-wheel drive. And the steering, first of all, is very light. So it's also got a fairly fast rack. So this is perfect for city driving like this, where, you know, if you have a lot of load inside the car, you don't feel that weight, and the steering doesn't feel heavy, and it's a fairly fast rack, so it's very easy to make corrections within in the tight city spaces. If you want to make a quick U-turn, for example, or a quick 3-point turn, easy breezy. The 6-speed manual is also very light to use. The throws are also not too long. The clutch is also fairly light, so this makes it very easy to just dawdle around inside traffic, especially if you're running this as a commercial vehicle for deliveries, for your small business or something like that. Very easy to spend an entire day driving around in city traffic in small, narrow lanes. As I go over these manhole covers and cobblestones, the suspension is also fairly supple, it's fairly comfortable. I don't really feel too much of any kind of the sharpness filtering into the cabin, so it's very soft. That being said, however, it again doesn't drive like a Golf. You still have a solid rear axle, you still have, but thankfully you have coil suspension, but it still feels a little bit vague, especially in the rear. But yeah, not as bad as the previous generation, still not as sharp to drive, but gives you confidence. The next thing is, of course, the tall windshield in front really helps with visibility. So I have a very expansive view out front. So now when I want to join the main road again, I have a very good view out the side and out the front. Also, thanks to these tall windows, I can really see exactly what's happening along the outside. The tall and flat and straight rear windshield also means that I have a really good view out the back through the rear view mirror. So visibility is good. Again, you have a lot of controls to adjust your seating position, although in this case all manually, so manual adjustment for the height, kind of a scrolling wheel for the backrest, and also manually sliding it forward and backwards. But I also have adjustment on the steering wheel, so ultimately I can find a very good seating position, and having something taller will be really useful, especially in the city. Let's talk about the engine, because while this is supposed to be a little bit of the updated version with the twin dosage of the AdBlue and so on, it still is quite familiar 2-liter TDI, which means there's a little bit of diesel clatter when you start off. There's also a noticeable turbo lag. It's quite evident, but it's not something that is too bad. But at the same time, it's not something that is so new age that it eradicates the clatter and the turbo lag. So all in all, in the city, pretty comfortable, very easy to maneuver, very easy to see out of, not too bad turbo lag, and also it's just very easy to manage in terms of its size. Now, on the Autobahn, how do things change for the Caddy? Well, first of all, there is a little bit more wind noise than I anticipated. So of course, this Caddy is still built down to a price, and with the harder plastics and stuff like that, I do hear a little bit more of that droning. But the tire noise as well is not too bad, but overall it's not as hushed as a Golf. Even at 100 kilometers per hour, there's a little bit more tire noise, road noise, wind noise that filters into the cabin. But again, if you put it in 6th gear and you're at motorway cruising speeds, you don't really hear the engine much. But certainly as well, at 100, if you put your foot down in 6th gear, it takes a while for that turbos to really spool in and give that boost to get that punch. The steering also gets a little bit more heavy, but it still feels a little bit light. But thankfully, that fast track doesn't really make it seem unsettled on the Autobahn. So that way, I would say it's fairly confident. But again, if I were to just slowly meander back and forth, you do feel the height of the car. Also, you can feel that the wind kind of tends to have a little bit more of a pronounced effect on it. There's a little bit more body roll as well, and yeah, it's not frightening, but it doesn't have a very Golf-like planted stance, and we can try to push it a little bit once the Autobahn opens up to go a little bit faster and see how it changes. But in the meantime, let's talk about some of the assistance systems. So this car, like I mentioned, comes with, for example, the Travel Assist, which contains a combination of the different software programs for the lane keeping assist, the traffic sign recognition, and the adaptive cruise control. But even if you don't get that, you can just turn on the normal automatic cruise control. So right now I've set it to 120. I can select the distance I want it to maintain with the car in front, so I'm going to keep it at a safe distance. And again, this system is in line with the current generation, so it's a little bit more advanced, and I like how this technology has progressed over the years. Again, visibility is really nice. I also have things like blind spot monitoring, so I feel confident. I have a good overview of what's going around me. And with that steering assist as well, if I have to pick up a call from my manager, if I'm running a fleet, or if I have to look at where the next delivery has to go, this Caddy is going to be kind of helping me stay safe, even if I do get distracted ever so slightly. The seats are also fairly comfortable. I have automatic lumbar adjustment. I can position it up and down and extend it to the degree that I want to. And again, with all the different kinds of settings and adjustments, I can find a comfortable seating position. This seat is fairly soft, I would say, but the contour is ergonomic enough that it provides support where it needs to. Right now we're getting 6 liters for 100 kilometers, which is a pretty decent number. We haven't driven for too long, so you can expect numbers even a little bit better than that if you do more Autobahn driving only. And yeah, that 12% increase in efficiency and aerodynamics, I think you can expect to see slightly better numbers than before. On the whole, I also like the digital instruments. So in this view, I have a very nice clear view of the navigation. Also, I can use gesture control on the main screen here to go back and forth between the different menus. So it's very easy to kind of not have to take my hands off the road. Although, as I say this, the gesture control doesn't work so well all the time. And again, I don't really like having to use these sliders for the climatization. But on the whole, fairly planted, fairly confident, inspiring, but still not the most quiet. Definitely on the slightly louder side because of the harder plastics, and a little bit of cost cutting, and this very large, voluminous cabin. There's a lot more sound bouncing around on the inside. Finally, the last thing I want to test with the new Caddy is, if you want to have a little bit of fun, how does it behave on a beautiful winding road? And nevertheless, even if it's, regardless of the conclusion we come up with, it's a good way to test this new rear suspension and the overall control of the car. By the way, I was able to get numbers around 5.2 liters for 100 kilometers with the last stretch of the highway that I was on. So that's a pretty good number, and I think it's a number you'll be happy with, especially if you're a fleet runner with multiple cars that you use for your business. If you might recognize this road, it's the same road I was on a couple weeks ago in the Cupra Formentor. So, very stark contrast between these 2 weeks and the cars I'm driving on the same road. So first of all, brake feel is actually really good. So the brake gives me plenty confidence. The steering is still fairly light and it's quite numb. So steering, while it's a little bit more direct and it's a little bit more fast in terms of the rack being not so slow, it's not something that I would say is very sporty in terms of the feedback that it gives you. Again, that light, easy to maneuver characteristic that it's trying to give, that it gives you in the city, kind of plays against it when you want to drive more spiritedly. Regardless, it's, I think, a fairly nice steering rack. The body roll is very evident. That's something that you can immediately notice. And being only front-wheel drive, I'm very anxious to push this hard on a wet road like this. So if you have the all-wheel drive version, when that comes out, perhaps you will be a little bit more confident, feel a little bit more planted. But there is plenty of body roll. But the rear axle doesn't seem to be doing its own thing. It seems to be following what the front wheels are doing. So that way, pretty good. And again, suspension is soft and comfortable, which means that ultimately, soft suspension gives you body roll. You have to expect that. The visibility also aids when you want to, thread these corners back to back like this. You can really peer through a couple corners ahead. But the engine, again, you have a lot of turbo lag that you have to get over to really get the meat of the power band. And the minute you start pushing it already, the trip computer says I have 5.4 liters for 100 kilometers. And yeah, the engine has plenty of torque and grunt, but it's not something that is really designed to be out and out thrilling to drive, which makes sense in this configuration. So yeah, I think as expected, overall, very manageable in the city, very spacious, very comfortable, really great technology. Build quality is good, although materials themselves might not be the best. Body control is not that great, and the sound insulation is also not that great. And engine performance for out and out speed and acceleration is also not that great. But on the flip side, you do get pretty good mileage. Out and out, I think the Caddy is doing what it's set out to do, and I think it does it pretty well. Let's summarize today's episode of the 5th generation Volkswagen Caddy. Prices start for the base variant, which is simply named Caddy, at 25,000 euros. Then there's a mid-spec level called the Life, and then you have the high trim level called the Style, which starts at around 33,000 euros. Add in a couple options and, well, you know what happens then. So, what did I like about this and what did I not like about this Caddy today? First of all, I really like the technology. I like the assistance systems that it now has. I like the interior design. I like the fact that it has that digital cockpit, and even the touchscreen infotainment system is really nice and functional, very intuitive and slick. I don't like so much that I have to use the touch sliders for the volume as well as the air conditioning. I wish there were still some more buttons, but I think this is the way it's going to be and we just have to make our peace with it. I also didn't really like the handling. I think the body's a bit roly-poly, but it's expected. This is not the Golf, this is not the Leon, this is not the Octavia, it's an MPV. But at the same time, the build quality in terms of the materials used could have been a little bit better. The rear seats could have been a little bit more sophisticated for this new generation, and overall the sound deadening could also have been improved ever so slightly to appeal to the more common consumer who wants to use this as a family lifestyle vehicle and not just a commercial vehicle turned into a family car. But overall, with the new generation that this platform brings, you still get the best that it has to offer in this package. Better engines in terms of petrol options and plug-in hybrids are going to be coming soon, as well as all-wheel drive. But if you want something fully electric, well, I think you have to look at something totally different. ID Buzz, anybody?